friends at Tivoli Brewing Company and the Department of Communication Arts and Sciences at MSU Denver, this is Unfiltered. And here are your hosts, Jay Schrader and Dr. Samuel J.
Circuitous route.
Circuitous.
No.
First off, Jonathan, I want to apologize for being late. You can pick up your mic now. I wasn't going to shake your hand. I was going to say pick up your mic.
Why? Are you sick?
No.
I mean,
it's good. So don't shut it off. Just leave it on. Okay?
And don't
come in here as close as you want.
Don't be shy about it, but don't do a J and
don't eat your mic.
Lick it.
Yeah. Don't eat your mic.
So there's apparently a very fine line between I don't know, for months, weeks.
Someday when you sell enough of these hats, we'll get some new mics. We'll make it happen.
I just need a new mic cover.
So we're at Tivoli today. Everybody knows where that is, but we have a very special guest.
Cheers, everybody at Tivoli.
Colorado Beer Man. Is that your moniker?
Handle.
Yeah, I mean that's actually my real name.
You changed it to Colorado Beer Man.
All right, McLovin, I want to see the driver's license.
Yeah.
And your real name, sir, is?
My real name, besides Colorado Beer Man, is Jonathan Shikes.
And what is your profession?
Well, I worked as an editor at Westword for 10 years, and I left about 3 years ago, and now I do freelance writing and editing out of my house.
This guy's journalism pedigree far outweighs ours.
It's a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
I think he's kind of underselling himself. He is the Denver craft beer expert. I think that's a safe thing to say. Right?
Anybody's a better expert at this than you or me.
So finally, we're going to get some honest answers about WeldWorks. You know, it could be.
All right, no loaded questions early on, please.
No loaded questions. All right, so how did you get into doing this thing? How'd you get into craft beer? What's the story? What's the history?
So I started homebrewing actually when I was 17.
Okay.
I was old enough to drink 3.2 beer in Denver. I got in under the wire before they changed it to 21.
Never mind, we're not going to do the math.
Yeah, don't do the math.
Yeah,
he looks like a young fellow though.
He does.
Yeah.
He wears that beard well.
Yeah, thank you. But a friend of mine did not, so he knew where a homebrewing store was, and we went down and started homebrewing.
Okay.
So that was in 1987, and after that, I drank plenty of mass-produced beers, but I also loved trying everything else I could get my hands on.
So you guys started kind of right at the beginning of that first phase in craft brewing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was brewing right when all those when the Odells and the New Belgiums of the world were getting started.
Okay. And so, what craft brew shop did you go to? Is it still around?
It is not still around. It was on 6th and Washington. It was called the Wine and Hop Shop. I think there's a cigar place there now, or
right by Don's Mixed Drinks.
Yeah, it's right around there. Yep.
Nice. Good
yeah,
memory.
I got a pull right there, huh?
That was strong.
Geographically, I got this covered. Let me ask you this, because we've been hearing a lot about all these guys that got into brewing because they couldn't drink legally. What the hell were your parents thinking? Like when you're bringing home all these ingredients and you're throwing them into a big barrel full of yellow liquid that's supposed to end up ultimately carbonated. I've been wondering this for months now. What kind of parents did you even have? Were they around? I mean, latchkey kid?
I don't know what my parents were thinking exactly, but we mostly brewed over at my friend's house, though.
Okay. You just told everybody it was a science experiment? Or?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't. I mean, we had numerous boil over accidents and beers that exploded in the freezers when we were trying to make them cold. I mean, and bubbling carboys in the basement. So I don't really know what my parents were thinking, or if they just thought it was. I have no idea, to be honest.
Don't worry, we're working in the lab today.
Yeah.
So where did you start? What was the first beer that you brewed then?
To be honest, I don't remember the first beer we brewed, but we tried everything from Charlie Papazian's book. That's what we had, and English milds and stouts and porters. I think we did a Doppelbock. We did pale ales, just whatever he had. We worked on, and the bottles. We would end up with maybe an inch of yeast in the bottom of every bottle.
Okay.
And but we read everything in his book, and it just said you can drink the yeast. Nothing you're going to do is going to kill you.
Okay.
So we were like, all right.
But you lost your best friend.
We're good. Yeah. Okay. May you rest in peace.
May you rest in peace.
Yeah.
By the way, you keep looking at these two. These are our flunkies. So these two follow us around. If
We did the intros already. They were carrying the heavy load conversation while I was just trying to get a beer.
John Reef and Mark Boucher are here.
Yeah.
University of MSU Denver employees, by the way.
Yeah,
so,
honorary unfiltered guests. Our hosts. Excuse me.
So I assume living out here, right, you're having to drink a lot of Coors and Coors Light and all of that. What was it about craft beer on the palate that you appreciated so much? At a young age, too.
Yeah, it just tasted so. I mean, I love drinking beer. Beer was always the thing that I enjoyed drinking, and yeah.
We'll get that answer.
We'll come back to that.
Okay.
This is unfiltered for a reason, by the way. We don't edit anything unless it's really
super unsavory.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Good. I just love the way they all tasted. They just had crazy different tastes to them and flavors, and it was fun. It made it a lot more fun to drink when something tastes good. So.
All right, that's a fair enough answer.
So I did some research, Sam, while you were racing through the parking lot to find a illegal spot to leave your vehicle.
That was this morning. But go ahead.
Right, it probably happened a couple of times today. Jonathan apparently matriculated out of the city of Denver to UC Santa Cruz for a time.
Okay.
Was the beer scene different while you were in college, or did it help reinforce your craft desires? Or, I mean, how did that shake out for you? How did that shake out for you?
Yeah.
Shakes out for you?
I like that. That's good.
I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to, craft, and I mean, I drank whatever beer I could get. We could get 6 packs of hams for $2.02.
Jesus,
and we would just stack them up on top of each other and buy them and walk out. And
tell the clerk to cut you off when you ran out of money.
Right? Yeah.
Tell us when to stop.
Yeah, I mean, we could scrounge together, dollars and pennies and whatever it was. But there were 2 breweries actually in Santa Cruz when I was there. Front Street Brewing was there, and Seabright Brewing, which is still around, was there too. And so we had plenty of beers down at those places, which was a lot of fun. But I wasn't really. To me, it was strange that you could brew beer, that anyone could brew beer, that you could open a restaurant and actually have a brewing system, because I felt like that was just something that big, huge manufacturers could do.
Right. So you're going to school. How did you get into journalism and writing and editing and doing all that? Was that straight out of school?
No, I left. I left after college. I spent 2 years kind of roaming around, and then I went to grad school at Northwestern for journalism. Got a master's degree in journalism. Came back to Denver. Had a lot of different small journalism jobs over the years. Went to Westword for a few years. Moved to California for 5 years. Came back and worked at Westword again. So
we've got a dude who went to Northwestern's journalism school, and we're doing an interview with him. Like this, he probably just thinks we're total turds.
Yeah, we're wasting his fucking time.
We are wasting. Like these guys are terrible.
We got this shit off the ground 30 minutes late. The guy can't drink for a beer podcast.
That degree in rhetoric and whatever your IDP degree are really paying off here.
Oh yeah. I think they called it fake banking degree.
Fake banking degree. Yeah. Yes.
We feel bad for this guy, and we've taken more of his money than we should have.
So what were those jobs as you were kind of bouncing around? When did you find out that maybe this was something, the writing thing, that you're good at? Did you know it, obviously, at a young age?
Yeah, I knew it at a young age. I was always the best writer around. No, I'm just kidding. That's
good. There are a bunch of writers all sitting around this table. I'm thinking like every one of them. I'm looking at every single one of them, and they probably all think that about themselves.
No, I was actually just terrible at math, so I had to find something I could do, and that was writing. I covered all different kinds of beats as a writer. I worked for a long time as a business writer, and the first stories I really ever wrote about breweries were when I worked for 3 years in Longmont at the Daily Times Call. I wrote about a couple of breweries that were up there, but in particular Left Hand, which was had just gotten off the ground a few years earlier, and they were tiny, and they were going to the Great American Beer Festival, and so I would go down to the festival and write about what they were doing down there. But those were the first stories that I got to write about beer. And in between that job and when I did my second stint at Westword, which started in 2007, I just started drinking craft beer all the time. That was really basically all that I had. So when I got back here, I realized no one was really writing about beer at the time.
Okay.
Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News had a little bit going on. There were
The
two
Rocky Mountain-
bloggers.
the Rocky Mountain
the
West?
Rocky Mountain
Yeah.
News. That was a former paper. Sadly,
the
may it
town
rest
had
in
two
peace.
big
For those of you that listen in on this podcast, Denver once upon a time had 2 major newspapers plus Westword.
Hunter S. Thompson used to write for Rocky Mountain News a lot.
Yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
that actually.
yeah.
Well, we rest in peace, Jonathan's ex best friend and the
Yeah.
Rocky Mountain News. Excuse
Yeah.
me, the Rocky Mountain News. But sorry, I interrupt
All the
mostly
time.
for effect.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
So now he lost his train of thought. Okay, so
what-
you're
what
right.
were we
You're
talking about?
okay.
Ah, you were the only writer doing
no,
craft
yeah,
beer.
people
I knew
were
exactly
writing-
where we were.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I started writing about it, and then shortly thereafter, Strange Craft opened. I was writing about the big breweries, but then Strange Craft was the first new tap room in Denver to open in a while, and to open as just a tap room. They didn't bottle, they didn't can, they didn't have food. They were just a tap room, and they were the first ones in Denver to do that.
What? Okay.
Yeah, can we? I want to walk back to that moment.
Yeah.
What was the conversation in Denver about such an enterprise? Like people going, this shit
yeah.
is never going to happen. This isn't going to last. This is a bad idea. Like what's the pulse of the industry?
I mean, I think people were hopeful that they'd be able to do something, but it was definitely something new to have. To not package and to not have food. It didn't seem like a business model that would take off.
Yeah. Okay.
At the time.
Okay. At what? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So what year was that?
That was 2010.
2010.
Okay, and 2000. God, I was here and I
seems
remember
so
all the.
close,
It
but it's
seems
not.
it's so recent in memory, but in craft beer years, which apparently multiply worse than dog years, that's
Well,
a
I
long
think you
time
spent
ago.
a lot of time there. You
Brian and I
Woodson,
both, yeah, it was
yeah.
close to the house, my house in back in the day, and
Sure, John Boy
actually
was
John
there,
Reef
yeah.
can attest to having probably been dragged there by my brother more than once, because it was in a rougher part of town.
Yeah.
Caught myself there.
What were those?
Yeah.
We never asked Kevin DeLang this, but what were those kind of legacy breweries thinking of the tap room only approach? As not just the beer drinker, but the business, the brewery owner. Did they see that perhaps as a good model, or they were just kind of, it was like an experiment that they were ready to watch?
I think they were ready to watch. I don't think they thought it was a good model. No one had ever done it. I think that some people didn't think it was even necessarily legal, and but it was.
Okay.
And you mentioned Kevin DeLang. He had the first tap room only brewery, I think, in the state when he opened, and so Strange Craft looked to him and said, well, if they can do it, we can do it.
Right.
I think that he mentioned who's the Strange Craft guy? Is it Tim? He and-
The Strange
Craft,
Tim Myers
Tim
from
Myers,
Strange.
yeah.
Was one of his guys.
Yeah,
Was
Kevin
one of his
mentioned that,
guys.
Yeah, it's kind of being those two working a lot together. Okay.
Just to put it in perspective, too, this is just hit me mentally. 2010 would actually have Strange Craft would have come after the legalization of marijuana in the state of Colorado.
Really?
So yeah,
Okay.
because I think that happened in 2009 technically.
Okay.
So I guess my point really is that craft beer is still really in an infancy, so to speak, or maybe it's in its like asshole toddler years. I can say that because I have a toddler,
Yes, exactly.
and Sam has two. But I mean, back in 2010, did you think you'd have a career being the craft beer writer in Denver?
Well, I for starters, I'm not sure if it's a career.
Thanks for being honest.
Right. It does not pay. That's not a thing that pays
Is
money.
it your passion though?
Yeah, it's a passion.
Okay.
And it's fun, and I enjoy I enjoy the people I've met and the people I meet all the time, and I enjoy writing business style stories about the breweries. I enjoy talking to all of them, so it's a way for me to stay a little bit in journalism and for me to stay in beer. But at the time, no, I did not think that it was something that I would be able to write a story about every day. And if someone would let me, I could write 2 stories a day, or more.
So that is actually something that I wanted to just compliment you on, because I think your beer writing is and oftentimes a breath of fresh air amidst the conversation of around craft beer in this town, because I think that business perspective often gets overlooked when we're talking about yeast and hops, the very technical stuff. So it's I appreciate how you write, because it's very, very informative. Yeah, it's excellent. And you brought your most recent article, by the way. I see.
Yeah, I had to bring it in.
So
because I was on the cover.
Okay, let's talk about.
Oh, that is a picture of you.
well.
Wait, you got to show it to the video. There we go. So tell us about this article, because I read it, I loved it. What is it? What's the most recent one that you kind of put out in Westword? Correct.
So this is the 30 most important beers in Colorado history.
Okay.
And it's obviously subjective, but
yeah, you got to read it. Yeah.
I didn't read it.
No.
It's a good one.
It was a dandy. Okay, so can you
go ahead? I'm going to.
You should dive right in right now.
Yeah, I'll just leave the interview. What made you decide? So you kind of rank things by eras, right? By decades and a lot. What made you decide to go that route in terms of not macro versus micro or something like that?
I didn't want to. Well, first of all, I didn't want to do like a rundown of the 30th most important, the 29th, because I that would be this was hard enough just trying to come up with 30 that I could justify as being the most important. Uh-huh. So ranking them didn't work for me. And the second reason is because I'm coming out with a book in March on the history of beer and brewing in Denver.
Nice.
And so that history is on my mind, and that history, the way the book is organized, also is historically. So that's why I did it that way.
So we know the kind of the figureheads of beer in this state. What, in your opinion, has Coors meant for craft beer in Colorado? Then now, what do you see from your expert opinion?
I think Coors established Colorado as a place to brew beer.
Okay.
It put Colorado on the map as a place with great water and great beer because of the ads that they ran, because of the Rocky Mountain spring water, because of all of that. So people associated those two things. In addition, Coors, the stories that I've heard is that Coors helped out with the early craft brewers, gave them equipment, gave them advice, sent their people to help them out, gave them ingredients, sold them ingredients.
That's a story that we are still hearing today, frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say more than 1 out of every 2 interviews that we do, everybody has to pay respect to Coors for their support, whether it's financial or
just being supportive of the employees that were there, who left to chart their own ventures.
Unbelievable how much positive feedback we hear about Coors. So I think that's huge. Personally, I'm blown away. Yeah. I'm blown away by it, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to realize, to remember that they did help out. They enjoy competition, but they did help those other breweries out. They had they had some of their own reasons for it. The Prohibition was still very fresh in the minds of the Coors family, despite it having been a long time ago, because the Coors family was very insular and they passed things on very closely. Okay. And they were afraid, even in the 70s and 80s, that a prohibition movement, a dry movement, could come back. So having allies was important to them, people who were not corporations, people who were on the ground. And you may have heard this before from other folks too, but that's another reason why they were supportive.
No, it makes total sense to me, for sure. I get that. And even the state, I think Colorado, it differs a little bit from when you go to California or you go to Washington in terms of it is a little bit more insular here, I think, in a lot of ways. It's I wouldn't say that people are competitive in Seattle, but here it's almost like everybody is brother and sister in arms in a lot of ways. Do you get that feel, or am I off base?
The Colorado is an insular place?
Yeah.
I've heard
or
both
supportive,
things.
I guess.
Of just a beer or
familial. Familial. No, the brewers
Oh, yeah,
as a whole here.
Yeah, that part of it. There are some real characters in Colorado and in Denver who have helped, who have taken that philosophy of camaraderie and really pushed it and tried to live it. I don't know. I know that it does exist in other states. I don't know to what degree. Now that we have so many breweries, that it's not around as much. Yeah. But it's definitely still there, and there are still brewers and breweries that really try and remind people all the time about what is supposed to make craft brewing different and what does make it different as an industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Were you going to ask a question?
No, not at all. Not at all. I just read that article.
You did. That was impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I got the highlights anyway.
My favorite in there, by the way, before I forget, is your respect for Comrade, which is they just won a shitload of
Dude,
geographic
yeah.
awards, right?
Where's David when
David
we need
Marks?
him? Jesus, that guy looked happy.
Those guys were. That was the first.
That's the most emotion I've seen out of that guy ever in those pictures.
Yes, for sure.
That's insane.
Which one, Dave or Marks?
David.
Both
Dave,
happier
yeah.
than dogs.
Yeah,
eating shit,
yeah.
man.
Marks was tough read the first time we met him too, but David at least opened up a little bit,
Yeah.
and we got to see some personality, but still not a lot of physical, visceral emotion.
I haven't been in that place where it wasn't relatively packed.
Jesus, I love that
it's
guy. Every time I
always
put on my Comrade shirt now,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm part of the family over
know.
there. I
It's
feel like
good.
I did my part to help win that award. Having digested and fully reflected on the 30 most important beers in Colorado history by Jonathan Shikes,
Speed reader.
the masterpiece that it is. I'm intrigued by a couple of things myself. The first is, and this always cracks me up, not in a bad way, because it pulls on some heartstrings for me. But anybody that pays homage to Dave Thibodeau has got their shit figured out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, not my family, my wife's family has a long, stormy history with Scott Brewing. So much so that my wife was selling swag in the dorm rooms at Adams State and Fort Lewis College. And Scott's always an entertaining story at the very least. But that being said, I mean, Dave Thibodeau kind of seems to be the informal or unofficial spokesman for Colorado beer, whether everybody agrees with his thinking or not. Do you defer to him on some of this stuff? I mean, or does his opinion weigh in any way whatsoever?
Yeah, I don't know if he should be the spokesman for Colorado beer. I don't know that he is, because he's real, he's a very low key, very laid back guy, and I don't think that would be a role that he would want. But man, he is funny, he is friendly, he embodies that thing you were talking about before about that collaboration and camaraderie, and he makes great beer.
Yeah, his beer's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
dandy.
And yeah, I did run these by him. I ran a bunch of stuff by him because he's been around for a long time, and because he grew up in Denver and or the Denver area, and went to college. I think here at our area campus, I believe.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, hey, that's a wedge.
Connection.
That's a wedge right
There
there.
we go. We got it in. How important is having those kind of insights to what you do? I mean, it's got to be just invaluable, right? To have connection, people you can call and ask questions about what's happening.
Yeah, there's definitely people who I trust and who I rely on in different areas of the business. And I ran the store. I ran my choices by 3 different people who have been around for a long time, and they disagreed with some and suggested others, and I tinkered with my list a little bit, and there's some that I was on the fence about, and others that I wished I could have put in, but I really wanted to keep it to a smallish number.
It's a respectable list.
It is. I love
to
it.
be
Yeah,
sure.
it's not
yeah.
overwhelming.
I don't know that it encompasses everything that's been done in beer in Denver and Colorado, but that's not the point of a 30 under 30, right?
Yeah.
So,
do you ever
no. Hang on.
Okay. All right. Jay's got a question.
I
We
do.
can't let
I
it forget.
do. I think this is huge. I want to see Jonathan's cell phone, because this man name dropped Dave Thibodeau and just told us that he talked to 2 other notable brewers in town. I mean, I gotta believe that your favorites list in your cell phone is a who's who of brewers. I mean, like, when Dave's in town, you guys get a beer? Should we be hanging out with you more?
We're gonna be like groceries tomorrow.
Oh,
Right after
nice.
Thursday,
Yeah.
so we're gonna come by.
And we'll deliver the groceries in the
bring
snowstorm.
some whiskey. Right. It's supposed to be good.
Yeah,
for
there's 2
recovery.
bottles in your front seat.
I know. I did take him inside my house now. So there
Yeah, I mean, Dave comes over and we make lasagna usually.
I would have picked him as an enchilada guy. I don't know why. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, I see Dave when he's up in Denver sometimes. I run into him all the time, and he and I talk. But he's a guy. He's so easy to talk to. Yeah. He's such a good guy. He's such a nice guy that I think he probably has that relationship with just about everybody he meets, who he meets in person, because it's hard not to it's hard not to joke with him. It's hard not to have a good conversation with him.
Yeah, it makes total sense. How do you balance the kind of fourth wall and covering and wanting to kind of be friends with all these brewers? Because, I mean, obviously it is a familial kind of industry and everything like that, but I know you got to write stories about not collaborations, but mergers and all of this stuff that probably pisses some people off. Are you kind of go, I got to do this. This is my ethic.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what they pay me.
Exactly.
That's the right answer.
Yeah. Good answer.
No, I
wrote this expose.
right. Yeah,
There's
but I won't
only
have
one
to run it.
There's only one copy.
I just need $50.
Yeah, and free beer.
Just wait until that surgery bill shows up.
Right. Yeah.
Is it something you have to manage a lot and balance? Or
It is. One of the lucky things for me is that I don't write reviews. I don't review the breweries. I don't review the beers, and that started as a Westword. Westword is real careful about reviews. They review restaurants, and they vet their restaurant reviewer carefully, and that's it. He or she has the opinions. Other people can like a meal or like this or like that, or have lists of favorites, but that's supposed to be the authority. And the same is true with the theater critic and the art critic, and then the parent company has some movie critics. So I never did reviews because they didn't want to muddle that up when I started, and it sort of remained that way. And I'm happy because I wanted to do some reviews. But in the end, I think that ended up being better that I didn't. So what I ended up being is really just a reporter writing. I write trend stories. I write business stories. I do lists, and yeah, there are likely some people who are not happy with that they weren't included in this. A lot of times there are people who are not happy that they are included in a list like this because they didn't get written about in the right way. But I try to. I try to write about the breweries that I like if I'm doing trend stories and things like that. But really, I try. I don't write as much about the ones that I think are bad, because. But I don't often come out and say that kind of thing. But in terms of I'm friendly with people. You have to keep people at an arm's length, a little bit.
Yeah.
And you just be honest. And then when they do, if there's something to write about, you write about it, and they appreciate it, and they appreciate, I guess, knowing that you're not going to screw around based on, I've written about brewers who I didn't like in person, but made great beer because they made great beer.
Yeah.
What's more important to you, the brewer, or the beer?
The product. Yeah, it's got to be.
I think the beer and the brewery is
more
what's
important than the person
because
behind
that's what
it.
people. I mean, that's what people are going there for. If the brewer's not a nice guy or whatever, that doesn't matter.
You can bury that in the story a little bit. And
Well,
still write about a good beer, right?
Yeah. I mean, what matters to people is the beer and their experience of the brewery. So that's the part that's important.
Well, you heard it here first. If Jonathan Shikes hasn't written about your brewery, chances are there's something that's not going quite right yet. Now, you could be on the list for soon, but who knows?
Soon.
So that all being said, what are your top 3 breweries in Denver right now? Or top 3 beers, which is easier? We already know you're 30 for 30. So
I mean, those are historic beers. These aren't necessarily like the best beers or anything like that.
Foundational beers.
They're foundational beers. They were game changers. To be honest, I couldn't do my favorite beers and breweries because it just changes too much, and I don't hang out at any one brewery enough because I'm always trying to try new breweries and new beers to really pay attention to what my favorites are. The closest one to my house is Cerebral.
All right, that was gonna be my question.
So that's I go there a lot.
Walking distance or?
Oh yeah, it's like 7 blocks away.
Oh,
so.
nice. Jackpot. What? Not okay. So breweries, yes, but what are the beer writers out there that you're reading that you really respect? Not just here in Denver, but kind of around the country, because I like to think I read a lot of this stuff just for work and for this thing. And so, like, who are the ones that you're reading and going, wow, this is really good stuff, whether it be about their particular area or be about craft beer writ large? Yeah,
I mean, locally the folks who write about beer, are usually terrific. I see John Frank from Colorado Sun, Ed Sealover from Denver Business Journal, Tristan from Porch Drinking. Those guys are everywhere. They're out there. and there's folks from some of the other magazines and other media outlets that do a really good job. Nationally, there's what's it called? Now I'm spacing it. The guy in Portland who is a great blogger.
Okay.
He's terrific, and
we'll find out his name.
There's a bunch. There's John Hall. There's and now that I'm on the spot here, all their names. Even though I was
you're good.
Though I was looking
I
at all their
forgot your
stuff
name.
all
Thank
weekend
God
long.
it's on your hat.
It's Ed. There's a real small group of beer writers who are really well known who are out there. Kate Bernot, if I'm saying that right. Yep. Tara Nurin, who does I think Forbes writing, does some real good stuff. Yeah. Good Beer Hunting gets a lot of attention. And I know I'm missing some other folks.
No, Tara, I like. I mean, she doesn't really pull any punches, right? She kind of goes right after the controversial issues in the industry, and I appreciate that.
Josh Bernstein writes for the Times and a lot of other publications.
That's who I'm interviewing next
New York
week.
Times. Are you?
Yeah, out in New York. Yeah, I'm going to this local bar.
Yeah, and Josh Noel from the Chicago Tribune is one of the leading beer writers in the country.
Sweet. But you started it, so fuck this Josh Bernstein guy. Right? We got Shikes, the Shikes man.
Yeah, it's a Shikes-a-palooza.
Before we talk about GABF, because I know want to get to there. You left Westword. You came back to Westword. I think we, as people who've lived here for a long enough time, recognize how great Westword is. What is it about that paper that makes it work?
Besides the nudie bar ads.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are
key.
God bless.
But I mean, there's good
journalism
in this thing.
There really is, and it's a good newspaper or magazine when it gets blocked in my office because the writing is that good. It's so good. I'm serious. Like I can't read this shit at work, unfortunately. But this is how long has this been around?
It's been around for I believe almost 40 years. 35, 40 years.
Okay.
I think it was founded in 70. Yeah, Patty's gonna kill me. 77 maybe.
This is from a guy that ran the joint for 10 years.
You're right. Yeah. Okay. But I read it when I was in high school in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was huge. It was huge back then.
Yeah.
And in the 80s and 90s, it was 180 pages. Now it's 60.
Wow.
But,
180 pages?
Yeah.
Jeez. Holy shit.
And that's just that's the way print media has gone.
Yeah. Sure. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. But it's managed to change with the times and stay relevant. It's really hard now, just being a print publication, to be relevant. But online, there's dozens of stories that they do every day. There's news and arts and food and drink and music, theater. There's all kinds of things. Plus the investigative stuff has gotten less and less. But there's still some great stories. The different angles. And calling things like they are. Yeah. Now it's not perfect, but it does a good job of seeing what's going on in the city and either calling it out or approaching with an angle that's different than a lot of media.
Where does Westword source its journalists? Is there one spot that pulls from?
No, they come from all over. I mean, when I got hired, I was a daily reporter for a small paper in Longmont. We're doing business stories. There's been Pulitzer Prize winners who've come through. There's been people right out of college who have shown that they understand what a story is, how to go after it, how to be fair, how to be honest, how to have an angle. Mm-hmm. So they come from all over. They come from Colorado. They come from other states. It's over the years, it's been a real wide variety of folks.
I do enjoy reading it. It's a good pub.
Yeah, I can't ever resist grabbing one when I see it. The problem is, as I start thinking about it and racking my brain, either I don't spend enough time in places anymore where it's readily available, which may say something about my character as I get older.
The online stuff is fantastic.
Yeah, well, I just get so restricted at it.
You can't read.
And
this is your chance.
Lots of pictures, baby. Lots of pictures.
Starts here. Okay, so GABF 2019 just wrapped up. What did you come away thinking?
What session were you at?
Experience and about the beers.
I was there. I was supposed to be there Thursday night. I did not end up going. I wasn't feeling so hot. I went on Friday and I went on Saturday afternoon.
Do you like GABF?
Do I like it?
Yeah. By the way,
I love it. I get excited every year. I love the bagpipes.
Yeah.
You know,
The
when things
bagpipes
kick
are
off.
key.
yeah.
I like trying new beers. I love seeing people. I love running into people randomly. I love people watching.
Yeah.
I wish there were more chairs so I could sit down. I don't know what. One year they had like hundreds of chairs everywhere, so
High
you could
tops and stuff,
take a breath. You could take a breath. You could rest. You could write your notes if you had any.
Yeah. Good point.
And then they got rid of all the chairs. And I'm old now, and so I need a place to sit down. And there's no freaking
No
place to sit
chairs
down
anywhere.
there.
I gotta imagine one of those chairs ended up in like a WWE Raw moment.
Oh yeah, probably at the convention center.
and
Yeah, for sure.
they were
Maybe.
like, "Huh, we should probably not have so many chairs readily available for drunk
Yeah,
people."
maybe that's what it was.
Somebody smashed one over somebody else's back.
Yeah.
They used it to knock the glass out of somebody's hand,
Right.
which is by far my worst experiences at GABF. But anyway, I digress.
It's okay. As he drinks his water, what'd you learn?
He's got to wet the
What'd
whistle.
you learn that you were kind of think that only you could have learned at GABF this year?
It's a strange year because there's a lot of strange things going on in beer. I think the Brewers Association, which puts it on, is still transitioning away from its sponsorships with the big brewers, with the Coorses and the Blue Moons, and the Millers and the Buds, and the Coronas.
Anybody else?
Wow.
They've,
The
Ballast
anybody,
points
anybody-
and the-
yeah. Anybody else they've sliced off the
Right.
list?
Right.
And the Founders and the Averys. You know, so
Man,
and
it sounds like they're making enemies.
Lagunitas and Flying Dog.
Jeez.
Flying Dog is took themselves out, but so they're still trying to figure that out. They need those big sponsors. They have Jameson. Last year they had Buffalo Wild Wings. This year they had the Hot Dog and Sausage Council, I think. You know, with the
Is that
Wienermobile.
why the Wienermobile?
Yeah, that's why the
Oh, I did see
Wienermobile was
that.
there.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
So would you say they're grasping a little bit too much?
That they're what?
We're grasping a little bit too much, or they're getting a little. I don't want to use the word desperate, but
No, it's such a huge event. They're trying to bring in people from around the country. Breweries in other parts of the country don't necessarily want to come anymore because they don't need to. There's thousands and thousands of them. My feeling for the last 2 years actually has been that they're going to need to think about some new formats and ways to do it. Whether they make it smaller again, whether they provide some sort of incentives for other breweries around the country, whether they hold one or two regional events, which would be extremely difficult because they have such an infrastructure in Colorado. But I think they really need to start thinking on how they're going to change things. And then the beverages themselves. We'll see what happens with CBD and with seltzer and with THC and with every other kind of beverage.
What do you predict?
I'm always wrong. Well, I'm not always wrong. Actually, I'm always right.
God damn it, he's
I know.
always right.
He's like, shit. I gotta write a story before surgery tomorrow. Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
Do you have butcher paper in the typewriter at home?
Do I ever what?
Butcher paper in the typewriter at home?
Is that
Yeah,
a thing?
yeah.
Just
Yep.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen. It's hard for me to imagine that seltzer is going to be what it is right now next year. Cider, people always say, is like 1% to 2% of the market. Seltzer was 1% to 2% of the market over the summer. I think it's maybe bigger than that now. At the rate it's growing, it would be huge, but I don't know if that rate is going to stay what it is. Next summer I think seltzer will be part of what gets drink, but I don't know that it will be quite the buzz that went on this year.
I feel like there's warehouses just stocked full of seltzer. They're going to be like army surplus stores in 20 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is weird. But you kind of think it's just going to be part of the natural landscape.
Yeah, I think it will be, and I think there'll be breweries that will stick with it, and they'll keep making it, and others that'll say we don't need that. I think breweries do need other options. They need to have a gluten-free option, and maybe they have a seltzer. Maybe it's somebody else's seltzer. I guess breweries tell me all the time that we would all be surprised about how many people come in and say, "I don't drink beer. What else do you have?" And they say, "We're a brewery. We make beer. That's what we have." but they're trying to provide something else.
I've heard it's easy to make too. I mean, the brewers
Yeah.
can turn it out pretty fast and
Yeah.
put it on tap.
And
so-
and what did Josh say at New Terrain that they stock everything because their customers ask for it,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
if they don't have it on the bar shelf behind the beer tender,
Yeah.
the moms and dads and whoever else that are rolling in are going to bring it themselves, and then they're just going to have a bigger problem on their hands. So
Yeah.
I feel like that's a fair point, right? If you're trying to sell something and now you got to cater to a lot more damn people, you might as well make your own.
Aside from potentially making a seltzer, did you notice breweries maybe pivoting towards something that might attract a seltzer drinker at all? Just any of those trends with fruit beers or anything like that?
Well, there's
Lighter
if you don't
IPAs.
like the taste of beer, then no. But if you do, there's Oscar Blues. Just came out with 100-calorie hazy IPA.
Okay,
That was followed by Odell, which did Avery, which did the same thing. And Odell is going to put one out in November.
Okay.
So that they're low carb, or lower carb, I guess, 3.5 grams. I think they have in there, and 100 calories. I think that is what's attractive for a lot of people about seltzer.
Okay.
Is because of the lower carbs and the lower calories. It's also what's attractive about Bud Light and Miller Light and those beers.
Yeah,
But they taste a lot different.
they definitely do.
So
Any other trends that you pulled out?
there were a lot of non-alcoholic beers. That was interesting.
Were there really?
Yeah, and that's a two-part trend because I guess people are drinking non-alcoholic beer. That's what I've been hearing. But at the same time, there's a lot of non-alcoholic beer that's being brewed so that it can then be brought over to a different facility and then infused with either with CBD or THC. The brewery that won one of the medals for non-alcoholic beer does that. It's called Two Roots. It's in San Diego.
Okay.
And Two Roots, the company that owns them, also bought Dad and Dude's Breweria here in town.
Yes.
So they're working on a couple of fronts for non-alcoholic THC beers, alcoholic CBD beers, a whole bunch of different products.
What's going to happen to hazies?
What's that?
What's going to happen to hazies?
Hazies are here for the long run.
Okay,
Yeah.
Are you a fan?
I'm a big fan of hazies. I'm a big fan of a bitter, clear West Coast IPAs as well. I think my hope is that the breweries that do hazies really, really well, or even just really well, will stick around and keep doing them, and the ones that maybe don't pull it off as well will go back to doing something else. Okay. The demand for the hazies perhaps will not be quite as intense as it has been for the last year or two, but I really think those beers opened up a new people who did not like beer before. Yeah. I really think they added a market with that style of beer. So I think they're here. They're going to be here, and they're going to be in demand.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good point. Like, I think a lot of people forget that a Juicy Bits invites people to drink an IPA, or even some of the stuff that Rubens is doing out in Washington. It's the same kind of thing. It's a big fruity beer, but you can easily walk people back towards that clear IPA once they have a taste for it, for sure.
Yeah, and even if they don't, they can just keep drinking their hazies. Exactly. They're sweet. Exactly. They're not bitter. They're full of fruit and tropical flavors, and they're fun to drink.
One last
question.
Speaking
of tropical,
what's the hat mean? What's the hat? That's a good transition. You're fucking learning,
dude,
Jay.
Man, I'm setting the bar higher and higher every fucking episode.
You are.
And I've had a good angle here too, because there's a little extra love on the underside of the bill of the hat.
Okay.
It's a little map of Hawaii on the bottom.
In case Jonathan gets lost, I guess. I don't know.
The hat. When I turned 40 10 years ago, I decided I was gonna do a bunch of things that I had never done before. Okay. Get it done before I turned 40, and I called it Shikes because the music festival Lollapalooza was so fun to say. And then I don't know, I didn't really get many of them done. But this year I decided I was gonna, before I turned 50 this last March, that I was gonna say yes to every travel opportunity I got. I was gonna finish my book, do whatever I needed to do, and make it Shikes. And then I had the chance to go with my wife, my sister, my wife's family, and some other friends out to Hawaii for a week, for longer than a week. for my 50th birthday. So that's what we called Shikes-a-Palooza, and they had
Love
these.
it. It's
these
cool.
Had
dope
the hats done
made.
for you? Those are dope hats.
Yeah.
All right. Before we forget, where can we follow you? Where can we read your stuff? And when does the book come out?
So Westword.com is where the majority of the stories are. I write occasionally for other papers. On Facebook, it's Colorado Beer Man or Jonathan Colorado Beer Man Shikes. Twitter, Instagram, same thing. Colo Beer Man.
Okay.
Colo Beer Man.
And the book will hopefully come out. It's a history of Denver beer and brewing. It's scheduled for March, so we'll see. Hopefully that's when it'll be out.
March 2020, ladies and gentlemen.
Let us know. We will plug the shit out of it.
Yeah.
That's
We'll do
awesome.
We'll do whatever we got to do.
Thank
I
you.
read a book.
Be
I read a
awesome.
beer book once.
You did? Did you read the homebrewing book?
No.
No? Never did that?
No.
All right.
The Goose Island
Let's
book.
do a cheers with the guy there who's drinking
Oh,
that water.
dude.
He's got a big
Water.
day tomorrow. He's got
Sorry
a big
about that.
day. No, you're
Yeah,
good.
hang
You're
in
good.
there.
Jonathan Shikes.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Sorry that I was really, really late. That is not my MO. So I'm really sorry. I'm very embarrassed. But
No, all good. Thanks for having me
good.
on here. It's
He was in good company.
maybe. John's here.
Not me. Yeah.
Okay.
Not me.
John
Steph,
Sykes.
Steph was entertaining him.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you
Thanks,
so
man.
much.
When they come to take you down,